In today's video, I'll be covering events relating to a massive volcanic eruption that took place earlier this year in 2022 near the island nation of Tonga. And of course, if you're interested in any of the world's strange and not so strange events, then feel free to stick around because I post videos just like this one once every 1 to 2 weeks. So with that, let's get into it. In a very small corner of the world's largest ocean, the Pacific Ocean specifically, lies a small nation scattered throughout a chain of 169 islands in the Tongan archipelago, 36 of which are actually inhabited. Home to roughly 105,000 people, the Kingdom of Tonga has history dating back well over 3,000 years. Its first people bore witness to some of the ancient world's most incredible natural disasters, ranging from earthquakes, tsunamis, hurricanes, and volcanoes. The Tongan archipelago itself is made almost entirely of new and ancient volcanoes. Each of the islands is actually the tip of a submerged volcano. Roughly 40 miles north of the capital island of Tonga, Tongatapu, lies a submarine volcano named Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai. Initially, the site of this volcano was composed of two small, uninhabited islands that were actually only a small section of the larger 5-kilometer diameter submarine caldera poking out of the ocean. A caldera is a term used to describe the geographical feature that forms after a volcano erupts, emptying its magma chamber and causing the ground to collapse, forming that iconic circular crater that you typically see with volcanoes. In this case, the giant caldera happened to be mostly submerged, with the exception of the two islands. In 2015, this particular volcano was going through a very interesting series of eruptions. Throughout this series of eruptions, the two small islands poking out of the ocean were actually joined together, as eruption after eruption spewed up tons of lava, rock, and silt until eventually a land connection was formed. Those who were observing this process were astounded, as this was really one of the best real-time examples of island building in the world. And after the 2015 eruptions, however, the volcano went into a 7-year period of dormancy until it began erupting once again on December 20th, 2021. The first eruption on December 20th began at around 9:35 in the morning, initially blasting out an ash cloud about 20,000 feet into the sky, eventually reaching close to 50,000 feet. Throughout the rest of December and into January, many smaller eruptions added more and more material to the island, expanding it by almost 72%. A couple weeks later, however, on January 14th, 2022, a massive eruption uplifted a large portion of the island material left by the 2015 eruption, sending ash plumes as far as 12.5 miles into the sky. Also, the resulting ash cloud from this eruption is recorded to have caused nearly 400,000 lightning strikes over the course of just 7 hours. But that wasn't all. Another even more massive eruption took place the very next day on January 15th at around 5:10 p.m. that completely erased all of the progress that was left by the previous eruptions, blasting out from the sea, causing plumes of ash to rise almost 18 miles into the sky, spreading out across a massive diameter of 160 miles. I would compare the power of this eruption to the atomic bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki, but I feel like I'd be underselling it just a bit. For context, during the Cold War, the United States detonated the largest nuclear device it had ever detonated, called Castle Bravo, which was also the 4th largest nuclear device to ever be detonated, which yielded a force of almost 15 megatons of TNT, which is about 1,000 times more powerful than the bombs dropped on Hiroshima and Nagasaki. For the Hunga Tonga Hunga Ha'apai volcano, at its rough maximum estimate, it likely had a yield of almost 20 megatons of TNT, roughly 5 megatons more powerful than the Castle Bravo bomb. This eruption blasted out shockwaves that resulted in sonic booms being heard as far away as Alaska, nearly 5,600 miles away from the actual eruption site. An interesting fact about this eruption is that it's actually the largest volcanic eruption to ever be captured from space. The damage from this eruption was far from localized, since just before the main eruption on January 15th, a massive, unstable section of the island collapsed into the ocean, causing a very large tsunami, while simultaneously exposing magma to the seawater, which caused it to instantly turn into steam, explode, then unleash the massive eruption seen on January 15th. The first country to be affected by these events was, of course, the country of Tonga. Shortly after the eruption at around 5:30 p.m., a tsunami roughly 4 feet high hit the capital island of Tonga Tapu, causing widespread damage. However, due to the variation in topography along the coast of Tonga Tapu, some sections of the western half of the island caused the tsunami to reach a height of almost 50 feet. In fact, on some islands in the area, such as Mango Island, virtually every house was swept away by the resulting tsunami. Also, just 46 miles northeast of the eruption site, the low-lying Ha'apai Island chain was slammed by a 5 to 10 meter tsunami, causing even more catastrophic damage. Due to the severity of the eruption and the resulting tsunami, the undersea internet cable connected to the Tongan Islands was severed, making communication with the outside world very difficult during the disaster, so it was pretty tough for those on site to relay the actual severity of the damage. So for a few days after the actual disaster, all those on the outside looking in could do was wait. Throughout the events immediately following the eruption, it wasn't just the tsunami that people had to worry about. Shortly after the first tsunami waves hit Tonga Tapu, ash and small pebbles began to rain down from the sky, coating the ground in a gray layer of soot, which many people later described as looking like a moonscape, and looking at the photos, it's hard to argue with that. Also, since much of the population of Tonga collects rainwater to use for a variety of reasons, people were urged to cover their water sources quickly so they wouldn't be contaminated by the falling ash. As of recording this video, there have been 4 confirmed deaths throughout this entire ordeal, including 3 Tongans and 1 British national, with many more being injured. One of the people killed by this tsunami was a woman named Angela Glover. Angela was originally from the city of Brighton in the United Kingdom and was described by those who knew her to be a very happy person who could light up the room whenever she was around. Not to mention, she had a huge soft spot for all sorts of animals and a love for the ocean. When she and her fiancé James got married in 2015, the couple decided they wanted a fresh start, so they chose to move to the small country of Tonga. This was largely inspired by Angela's childhood dream of swimming with whales. Almost immediately, Angela and James blended into their new community, with their neighbors embracing them into the local culture with open arms, and the two of them loved it. Before long, Angela's husband, James, founded a tattoo parlor, and Angela herself, with her extreme love for animals, unsurprisingly started the Tongan Animal Welfare Society, where they would take in stray animals and try their best to find a loving home for them. On January 15th, 2022, shortly after the eruption and subsequent tsunami warnings, Angela and her husband James were outside their home on the island of Tonga Tapu when the tsunami waves crashed into them. James managed to cling on to a nearby tree. However, Angela, while trying to save their dogs, was swept away by the resulting waves, and when the tsunami finally subsided, Angela's body was discovered by her husband James shortly after. Many thousands of families have been affected by this unprecedented disaster. Not only have hundreds of homes been swept away, the food and water supplies of the Tongan Islands are still in a pretty fragile state. Thankfully, there has been a glimmer of light throughout this whole situation, and that is that many nations and volunteer groups from around the globe have grouped together to send much of the needed aid to the people of Tonga and the affected regions, such as water, food, and resources needed to repair and improve the local infrastructure to ensure that when something like this happens again, the people will be better prepared to face it. Even now, in February of 2022, the Tongans living abroad have had significant trouble contacting their loved ones on the islands due to the severed undersea internet cable still undergoing significant repairs. An interesting fix to this was actually introduced by Elon Musk, who, as recently as February 6th, is utilizing the capabilities of SpaceX's new Starlink satellite internet system to attempt to restore communications in Tonga. This eruption took the world by surprise, of course, as all natural disasters tend to do, but as always, many around the world are currently working together to rebuild what always will be the vibrant and culturally rich nation of the Kingdom of Tonga. Hey there, thank you so much for sticking around. If you found this video interesting, consider subscribing and hitting the bell button to be notified of new videos just like this one that I post once every 1 to 2 weeks. Alright, so with that, I hope you have a great day, and goodbye. Tsunami causing even more catastrophic damage. Also, since much of the population variety of reasons restart by Elon Musk, who as recently as February, oh come on, it's gonna show up in the mic.